Okay, people. Continuing my 550 horsepower series. Time to do some maintenance. Anyway, gonna check the timing, replace the plugs, and install a new fuel pump check valve kit. So, my other videos are kind of, I've got a couple of ways to check the timing. I want to show one really good way to do it, where it's kind of a lot easier than it was, than I've shown in the past. And some of that series was the first time I ever really filmed, so there's a lot of mistakes made. It was what it was. But, okay, so what you're gonna need a timing light, right? I've got this one I bought from, I don't know if I bought this online or O'Reilly, I can't remember. It's really good. Show you the degrees and shows you 0 if you want it to advance, that kind of thing. You're also going to need something to ground out your coil. So I got a 4-banger here because this is a 4-cylinder engine. Okay, you're going to want some sort of remote start. Okay, so I got this little homemade deal that I made. It's just a remote start. I only use a couple of wires. I'll use my hot and I'll use my solenoid, which is these 2 wires. Okay, I'll have to hook up on the engine. And then, because we're really only concerned with checking timing, alright, so you're going to want some kind of remote start. And the reason you want a remote start is because when I put it in forward gear, wide open throttle to check my timing, the engine won't start with the key on position on the remote. So you want to do that, and then you want to have some water going in your impeller so you don't mess up your lower unit's water pump. I'm gonna go ahead and put a compression tester in the top one, and then I'll just go on down, take the spark plugs out. The reason you take the spark plugs out is it'll turn over a lot easier. Here are my spark plugs, okay, and these are just BUHW-2s. Okay, I'm gonna put champion plugs in them. There's number 1. Okay, doesn't look too great, pretty oily. This one's, it's fine, doesn't look too great, a little oily. This one's probably a little bit more rich. Okay, and then this one is the same thing as 1 and 2. So, okay, so we got our plugs grounded out. This is going to ground. I've got my compression tester in the top. Then you're going to want a meter of some kind. So I've got this just right now on my battery side just to look at it. So I got 12.74 volts. I've got my wires here for remote start, which is this guy. Okay, I got my timing light set up, right, 0 degrees. Okay, so on these old engines, you have 5 things on your timing that you have to check. 2 of them are mechanical, 3 of them are electrical. And so the 2 that are mechanical are your primary pickup on your carburetor and your secondary pickup on your carburetor. And then your 3 things on your electrical side is to do with your trigger, or in this case it's a distributor. And so you have your spark advance stop, which is going to be your wide open throttle maximum spark advance. Okay, then at idle you've got your they call it throttle stop, and then you've got your idle stop screw. So throttle stop is just at idle in neutral. It's going to be 5 to 7 degrees before top dead center. Okay, so I've got a little book and it tells you. Okay, in my book, it tells my firing order, and then it tells you what spark plug, right? So this is for a Merc 500 with a lightning energizer system. Okay, and this is a Merc 500 maximum spark advance. Okay, so this would be distributorless. This is with the distributor. I also have this. Is actually a better key. Here's the tune-up specifications for a Merc 500, 45, 50 horsepower, 4-cylinder. I'm sorry. And it tells us our firing order, our firing sequence, spark plug type. I recommend the Champion 78 LV or L78Vs. Gives you that this is an adjustable because it doesn't have a prong. We got maximum spark advance 30 degrees before top dead center at 5,000 RPMs. So that's what we're looking for. And then our throttle primary pick is between 7 and 9 degrees before top dead center. Alright. And it gives us some water pressure readings and that stuff. So what we're looking for is to go ahead and put our motor in full wide open throttle. Then you're not going to be able to see this because this plate, these old engines, this plate really screws you up. You can't see inside to look at the carburetors. Well, you can, but I can't show you because you really got to look through that hole and this hole down here at the bottom. And they've got holes where you can adjust the carburetor, and I have to look and find those. And that's your jet idle screw, right? A couple of these holes. I think I go in here, and I usually go in up here. Okay, but we want to check and make sure that butterfly is wide open. It even has a sticker. A lot of times look for your sticker. So before top dead center is 0.232 thousandths of an inch, I guess, at 35 degrees. So this is 35 degrees. Here's our timing marks, and then on our flywheel, if I were to rotate this around, we've got our notch. The secondary notch is what lines up our distributor. But to make this more visible, I'm going to take some white paint, okay, and mark it. So okay, so to do this, you need this to go more this way, right? So if I adjust this lever and go out, then it's gonna pull this back more, right? So I'll put it in neutral. I'll go ahead and see if I can't get this out a little further. Okay, so on the top cylinder, I got around, it's almost 100, so that would be 80, 120, 30, almost 100, 140 pounds of pressure on that top cylinder. I've adjusted my time to 35 degrees. Right now I've got it on the primary pickup side. So I've looked at my carburetors, and my carburetors are not opening all the way when it's at full wide open throttle, which means I'm going to have to take the front plate off. To get this front plate off, you got to take the 2 bolts here and here. You take the bolt out down here, right? You're going to take the other bolt out that was right here. Okay, you're going to take the ground off if you have one right here. Okay, and then you're also going to take the cotter pin that's out of your manual choke knob, right? Now this will lift up and lay back. So I may not have to completely remove it. Yeah, so right now I'm gonna wide open throttle. So yeah, this will give me access. Just pulling it back, I can get in there, and then I can look at what I got going on back here. So I set the maximum spark advance, and there's a reason I did that first. Because when you set the primary and secondary pickup, when you push that distributor back to, like pushing it back to where I set that screw and locked it down, that's your advance timing. So if you put your motor control all the way in forward gear, wide open throttle, the butterflies will be wide open. If they're not, you got to adjust them. And then you got to adjust your primary pickup. So one thing, this is the lever, okay? That's your throttle lever, right? One thing to note, this is super important. Without this bushing right here, okay, you'll never get that correct. It just won't, because what'll happen is if you say you went and got a smaller bushing, or you just put the bolt in, this is gonna move left or right when you're say it's like this, right? And so if you go this way or you go that way, this is gonna move, and that's gonna affect your timing, and it's also gonna affect your carburetors. So after you set the advanced timing, that little set screw, then you want to set your secondary and primary pickup. So I like to do the secondary first, which is your advanced wide open throttle, and then when you go back to neutral, you should be able to see if your carburetors they should just barely be cracked. This is your spark advance, right? This is the front plate. And if you see, okay, so it says stop adjustments. Top one's throttle. And then you see it says spark with an arrow down. So that is this jam nut and screw. So that's your spark advance. This would be the stop throttle. Okay. And then this is going to be your idle. These are kind of what I call the electrical, because it stops the distributor in those locations. So we set the spark advance, this jam nut and this screw, and now we do the two mechanical on the carburetor. If you bring the front plate back some, then you can get to those locations for your throttle stop. Okay. Now I'm going to see this probably. But see, we have the carburetor. It's got this sort of like a horseshoe looking lever, right? So you'll see that first location is going to be your primary pickup. And your secondary pickup, when this thing rotates around, then we want that, it's going to rest against the jam nut where I set it at 35 degrees before top dead center. And then that little horseshoe looking thing should be wide open throttle with the butterflies wide open. So the way to set that is, once you got it against the jam nut, is this little screw and jam nut. Okay, so you can push it in to get the butterflies more open, to set the stop, and then when it's resting in neutral, then your primary pickup is going to be like just touching that. Okay, but the second screw on our plate, this is where you're going to set that, you know, was it 5 to 7 degrees before top dead center. Okay, so you'll adjust that in. Okay, so I'll tell you, getting the linkage correct is not an easy task. So wide open throttle, our butterflies were wide open. Okay, but then when you go back to neutral, you'll notice that your carburetor is, the butterfly is too open. So you need to close that butterfly and set that primary pickup. So the way to do that is just to simply adjust the little plastic piece that, okay, see the plastic piece that touches the little horseshoe looking thing that opens the butterflies. So we need to move that actually back. These two screws, right, they're here and under there. Okay, so I'm going to loosen them up and I'm going to push this back a little bit, and then that's going to change our butterflies. So I'll have to take my screw and then push it in some so that it opens the butterflies. I can go ahead and take those 5/16 nuts and go ahead and lock them down. And if you do this one that's on the outside first, it'll prevent it from moving on you. Forward wide open throttle. And we'll check our secondary. Okay, let me just say that your throttle cable, the throttle lever, the throttle linkage to the distributor, so I didn't have enough play here because I was out of play. So I had to adjust my throttle linkage, my throttle cable, in order to get this where, you know, it would go and open the butterflies to full open throttle and then close at neutral. I guess my next step is go ahead, put this back together, see if we can time it. Right. Number 2, 140 psi. Number 3, 140 psi. We're looking at about 134. So the bottom was a little off. Spark plugs are back in it.